Friends, it's an honor to have a new friend who's really not a new friend in the sense that I've heard Mark Karras sing for years back when I was in college, and the group For Him was on the radio, and these guys, I saw them in concert a couple of times. And Mark, you guys minister to so many people, to my heart specifically. So to be able to call you friend in ministry and what God's doing in the kingdom right now is special. But welcome to the Worship Circle podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. I'm grateful for the new friendship as well. And man, just all that God has done through your ministry in the church, and then ministering to worship pastors all over the world, the way that you've connected guys to health.
Yeah.
And that you've given them a place to come together and to process. Just amazing, you know. And I'm honored to be a part of Worship Circle. And
yeah, guys, Mark is leading a small group this term with us, and we're just so grateful for your yes to that, Mark. And I'm just going to look forward to what God's going to do as these months go by. So thank you for saying yes to that. And what was your feedback just from the first session? We were talking a little early before for the people listening and going, man, what's Worship Circle about? Mark just led a small group. It was month one. Like, what was your kind of takeaway from?
I told them, I said, that's the most obvious speed dating situation we've ever been, or I've ever been a part of. It was like, there was not a whole lot of time for small talk. It was like we dove deep, you know, and which is not easy for a bunch of guys, you know. Guys are usually more guarded, but they really did. I mean, they were just kind of like, hey, I'm here because we opened up the conversation to talk about where you are and what you've been through and what God's saying to you right now. And man, and it's like, you know, we did kind of realize on that first call, the first meeting, the small room, it was like, man, we're all messed up, but that's okay because God uses imperfect people. And, you know, it's like, so I think we all kind of realized, hey, there's nothing we can say in this room that's going to shock anyone. We can just be honest and process together.
Yeah.
Which was beautiful.
Wow. It was a good session, and it's just an honor to have you. And I met you through my friend Randy Cochran, who used to work with you there in Texas at Gateway, and so grateful for that. But guys, sometimes you meet people and you're like, man, I wish Mark and I had met like 2 decades ago. Because we've been, you know, in music, different kind of places in music, but also involved in the church with worship. And so, man, I just wanted to give people an opportunity to get to know you on this podcast, the people that follow Worship Circle. And I hear you were born in Mobile, Alabama, of all places, Mark.
I'm an Alabamian, and living in Texas, I really did not think that Texas would be where I would end up. I mean, my wife and I, we were doing everything we could to stay in the deep Southeast. And then when God calls you, you just go, you know, but I'm a guy that I kind of figured we would be living near you in Atlanta because like all of our world, like I flew Delta all my life, even with For Him, Delta was the airline that we flew. And so, and all of like my wife's mom and dad had a beautiful place up in Western Carolina. You have to go through Atlanta, and we would go through there and but God called us to Texas, and we love it here. We love this church. And we have been here now for 12 years, and we've seen God do amazing things over the journey of the 12 years. And even more recently, we're kind of, you know, a lot of people would know what Gateway has been walking through, and it's just been amazing to see the grace of God and His hand at work, and being able to pastor and serve people here. It's been a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful for you and for your faithfulness in it. Before we go back a little bit in your story, are you an Auburn or Alabama fan?
I am a big Alabama fan.
Okay.
You know,
sorry, Auburn
I didn't
people.
go to Alabama. I went to Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I almost went to Alabama. At the time, back in the late 70s, right as it was turning into 1980, is when I went to school, and that shows you my age. But I was going to go on a partial baseball scholarship to Alabama, and I got a full scholarship to Lee. So,
were you there with Jay DeMarcus?
No, Jay was after me. Jay came. He came a little bit later. He and I traveled with the guy that was over the group, guy named Danny Murray, who
Yeah.
has had huge impact on so many people's lives, on my life as well.
Right.
Jay and I both travel with Danny in his group. And so,
Okay. For those of you who don't know Jay, he's with Rascal Flats and
Yeah.
just a good dude. So man, talk about you're at Lee University. What happened next? Because I know Truth was involved. And I remember seeing Roger and Truth in Atlanta at Mount Perrin or somewhere one time. And but I knew you guys had started out of that.
Yeah, I left college in 1986 and thought that I would end up going to a church, but also loved writing songs, loved, the artist side of things, and knew that was in me.
Right.
But I didn't know if the opportunity would be there. But Roger called. I was working at a little men's shop at a clothing store in my senior year of college, and he found me, gave me a call, and, and he was like, "Hey, I'm Roger Breland with Truth, and just curious, would you want to consider auditioning and traveling with us if you make it?" And so I said, "You know what? I'll try that." I mean,
wow.
And the crazy thing is Truth was based out of Mobile, but growing up, I never heard Truth.
See, that's crazy that you were there and you never heard them.
I mean, Truth, the offices, and they would base their travel out of there, but they weren't there much because if you ask anyone in Truth, we didn't stop traveling throughout the course of the year. The only time we had off was about 15 or 10 days between Christmas. It's like right before Christmas, and then we'd come back about January 4 or 5.
Right.
Because Truth would do about 360 concerts a year.
Okay. That's crazy.
You know what? Our first year in 4M, Todd, we did 265 concerts, and we thought that we were slacking.
Unbelievable. So y'all had this work ethic that was just like road dogging it.
You know what? The thing is, at 62 years of age, which is what I am now, I look back and I'm like, that's why I have some of the physical challenges I have,
Yes,
just because of all the road miles. I'm like, not enough workouts, not enough can cover up the fact that in my mid 20s to my early 30s, I was just a road dog. I just traveled so much.
What are some of the things you'd say you're most grateful for just in your life, Mark, in that season? And then what are some of the things that were just tough,
Yeah. I would say, while I was in Truth, I met my future wife. And so I'm very grateful for Jody. We've been married 35 years, and it's just been
congrats.
amazing. She is the person that has basically shaped me so much just because of day in and day out, just walking alongside her and just growing in the Lord with her. We have a great relationship with one another, but we have stayed in the Word and we've stayed on our knees in prayer.
Right.
But, it always happens. Anytime you do a podcast or anything, there's a guy with a leaf blower that just seems to have to come by.
I can't hear him.
Okay, good. Okay,
but hold on, Mark, because I'm convinced that a form of hell is going to be leaf blowers, Jardiance commercials, and those backup beep things on trucks. Because every time I'm trying to shoot a video anywhere, it's like beep, beep. I'm like, come on.
I agree. You know what? That would make my top 3 list too. Yeah. Probably. It's like
Ozempic or Jardiance and leaf blowers and beeping
because this
noises.
guy has not. I've been working all day long.
Yep.
Having meetings and conversations, and you start something where you're recording, and sure enough, he's like, "Oh, it's time for me to turn on."
We did a story work intensive here at my house with some friends in worship circle, Mark, and wouldn't you know it, like we're on the back porch, it's just peaceful and beautiful. One morning, we're just all being still and quiet, and I'm like, we don't have an option here. Like these guys came from all over to be here for this time, and we have to wait another 45 minutes for the lawn crew to clean.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping the guy, like, there's nothing for him to blow off of the sidewalks right out here. So I'm hoping he just looks and says, "I'm not going to do it."
That's pretty funny.
I love your question though, because like things I'm grateful for. I think of the psalm that says, "I once was young, but now I'm old. But the one thing I'm certain of is I've never seen the righteous forsaken, or their seed begging for bread." And I just I think the thing that I feel so strong about is I'm grateful for God's provision through the years. And I'm so grateful that He sees us at our worst, and yet He loves us through it because He knows what we can be if we become all that He's called us to be, because His purposes for our life, they're not interrupted by our mistakes. God is a God of grace and God of unconditional love. And so I've experienced that through my life. You know, my life has been better than I deserve. And even where I'm serving now and who I get to serve with and what I get to do, I don't feel like I deserve what I get to do, but I'm grateful.
Yeah. Well, tell me about, because let's touch on For Him. I was telling you on the first call I had with you, I saw you guys at Mount Pierre in Atlanta, and I think Where There Is Faith had just hit radio. Yeah. And my granddad had just passed away, and it was like that lyric, "There's a lady dressed in black," was in the song. And so I was like, man, I'm going through this loss of my granddad, and that song just ministered to me, and I got to thank Andy and you guys when I saw y'all. But just what was that journey like from, man, we're in truth, now we're here, and then all of a sudden you've got to turn in another record and another single.
Yeah.
Just that world for everybody that's like, man, one day I want to, and it's great, but like one day that's what I aspire to, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. The journey was such a God journey, because we were on the bus with Truth, and, you're a part of a big team.
Yeah.
And, Truth is really almost like mission work. I mean, talented people everywhere, but there's just you're staying in host homes every night. And yet, while we're still in Truth, we get the call and we say yes to become a group called For Him. Took several months to figure out what we wanted to call ourselves. And then, so we recorded in December and we were still in Truth. We stayed in Truth until August of the next year.
Yeah.
And so Where There's Faith comes out early spring, March, and so becomes a number one song that stays number one for a long time. And so people are kind of wondering, where is this For Him group? We can't see them in concert.
Right.
And it was because we were really tucked away in Truth, which is a good thing. I think it was a healthy thing because, in Truth, you can't really ever kind of feel like you're something big because you're just doing so much work that you just kind of, all the time, it's like it's fun. You're with a bunch of other people, but it's like it really kind of keeps your ego in check to some extent. And so by the time we started traveling as For Him, I think so much had been shaped in us because of our years in Truth and because of Roger. We owe Roger a lot of thanks because, he was really good at, he could be honest with you if you started to get to feeling a little too good about yourself. And so, and Roger is one of my dearest friends. I have so much respect and love for him, but he really helped us keep things in perspective, even during the first few years of For Him. And because we had it wasn't a slow ramp. It was like Where There's Faith comes out and it's like, boom.
Right.
And then it's like, all of a sudden there's this expectation for this new male vocal group in Christian music. First of all, they can't find us for the first 8 months. They're looking for us and they're going, where are these guys? And then we start traveling and then it's just like, then we were just running to catch up with the momentum that radio had brought us.
Right.
But in our heart, we knew that we were a bunch of church guys that more than anything else, because of our years in Truth, we wanted to do ministry. There was never a question as to what the desire was in our heart. We wanted to see people come to know Jesus. We wanted to edify the church. And so our outlet was For Him. And so finally, I think after about 10 years, we just decided to rest a little bit. And then we gave it another good 6 years. And then we decided we'd finish touring. So 16 total years.
That's beautiful. Thank you guys for all you did. There's so many good songs. As you're talking, I'm imagining going back. And one of the questions I had for everybody listening, because I think it crosses over a little bit into what we do on Sunday mornings, but How did y'all decide who sang what? Like
Yeah.
you got, I would imagine A&R's got some songs, or like, hey, we've got this batch of songs and we're putting it all together for a new record. Who's going to carry which song? And did the song dictate that sometimes?
The song dictated it. So one of the things that early on, it just kind of fell my way is I just got to writing a lot. And so I ended up writing a good portion of what we sang.
Right.
And there would be times that I would just be in the middle of a song and go, this is an Andy song, or this is a Marty song, or this is a Kirk song.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, it's like Basics of Life. I was like, Kirk had really not had a big radio single yet. And when I walked in with Don Cook, I said, this song, If You Don't Know Me by Now. If you don't know me by now, it's a 6/8 feel.
Right.
And I said, Kirk, his voice on that would be perfect, you know? And I said, let's write a song with that pocket.
Yeah, man.
And so I had this idea for the Basics of Life.
Right.
And so it's like, we started writing it at about 10 o'clock at night, and about 1 a.m, we were finished. And we just happened to be in Southwest Alabama, and Kirk was about 5 minutes away. And I called him and I said, you got to hear this song.
Yeah.
This is your song, Kirk.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah. And so, anyway, and like for future generations, there was never a question in my mind when the song was finished writing the song.
Yeah.
I said, that's an Andy song, because I could hear his voice, just the tenor and the power in his voice singing that. And so,
that's so cool that you were able to, it's just great how songs fit certain people, you know, with what they're saying and what God's given that person to carry. Didn't y'all have, who was the lead singer from Yes? Didn't y'all do a song with him?
That's one of my favorite songs. The Only Thing I Need.
I love that song.
And I love that song too. We did that on the Caleb cruise just recently, and everybody was like, man, that, like a lot of people, that track and the arrangement is still very current.
Yeah.
And strings on it.
Yeah.
And John Anderson's voice, it's kind of like, it's all over it. So when we do it, we still got his part in there. And
it was beautiful.
And it's just like, and people are like, man, that voice in there. And I'm like, yeah, that's Owner of a Lonely Heart. If you listen to pop music, it's like,
I heard that on the radio when it came out, Mark, and I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah. You know what? It was the first time, I'll never forget, we walked into the studio and Brent Bourgeois, who was the producer of that Streams album, Brent was like, there comes a leaf blower. You can see him right over there. He's just at work. He's just blowing away. Anyway, sorry
I'll have
about
Chandler
that.
take it out with AI.
Lord, take it. Yeah. But anyway, Brent was like, because we were actually going to do a different song.
Yeah.
And so the song was going to be a song called Sanctuary, and it's on that same album. And
right.
And so, and that song, basically, I had written it with Michael W., and it was for him to record. And so all of a sudden, Brent's like, hey, I've got this idea. And he said, I think that I want you guys to do a different song. And so he played that, and it was the strings and the whole feel, and the vocals weren't quite on it yet. And he was like, what do you guys think? And I'm like, man, I love that song. So we shifted and moved into doing that song. And then what happened is, while Brent was at Dark Horse Studios, John Anderson was in Studio A, and Brent was in Studio B.
Way.
Yeah. And literally, John Anderson passed by, and he said to Brent, he said, what is that song? And Brent said, oh, it's a song, and we're doing it on this album. And John Anderson was like, man, I love that. It's so beautiful. And Brent said, well, you want to sing on it?
Oh my God.
This is the way it happened.
Yeah.
And John Anderson's like, yeah, I'll sing on it. And so John Anderson gets behind the mic and starts singing. Goodness. And Brent's kind of walking him through the song. And then we get there, and John's part's already recorded. And so then we start cutting our parts. And it was just kind of a cool thing. And it's one of my favorites. It's just a beautiful, the strings, the vocals, everything about that's so much fun.
It's just cool because I did my last little EP at Dark Horse, and when you talk about that, I can imagine John being there, and there's people working in that cabin, and
Yep.
how beautiful that moment was.
Yep.
Mark, tell me this, because you guys were doing your thing with For Him radio and touring and ministering to people, and then at some point, the worship culture moved from like Maranatha Praise CDs that were kind of generic, to, hey, there's these people like Paul Balash and people down in Hillsong, and that stuff started coming on in Passion. What was that like for you, and how did that kind of influence your heart and that kind of handoff that was going on there from kind of CCM to worship world?
Well, I definitely heard, there was no doubt that, like, it was obvious that there was a shift, and we kept meeting these guys that were, worship artists, and you got to hear that. I mean, you can't hear that, right? I can't hear you because it.
Oh, here we go. I had myself. This is awesome. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah. Folks, if this stays on the podcast, that is the leaf blower guy that just felt like it was time to come by.
He had one thing to do today, and he is doing it.
There were no leaves on there, but he found them from somewhere. Put them on there so that he would have a reason to blow.
It's like he just went and found some stuff.
He found leaves because there were none. I'm telling you, I showed you earlier.
You did. Oh my gosh,
it's hilarious.
Don't we love Lee? Bless his heart.
Bless his heart. Lord, I pray blessing and favor over that guy blowing that. It's got that backpack leaf blower.
Amen.
But I love that question though. So I like starting to hear and, listen to all of the modern worship come together. And I agree with you. Like the Maranatha and the Integrity stuff was a little more generic. I mean, beautiful people were like, I remember Integrity Music's Tape of the Month Club, and
right.
And so then all of a sudden you start hearing like Paul Balash, who was with Integrity for a while, and then you hear, I remember Don Moe and Ron Canoli, and then Darlene Scheck and all of that, and then it's like then you start hearing. I remember the first time we met Chris Tomlin. He was playing a festival, and it was right at the beginning of his career, and I think his only big single out would have been Forever at that point. And
just came out.
And we met him, and he rode with us in the van over from the hotel to the outdoor festival. And I was like, I think I've heard your song. And then now kind of looking back, I just saw him not long ago, and it's just like amazing, all the songs that he's been a part of that the church sings. But it's like, I think the thing that separates, just as my thought here, Todd, like For Him, we sang third person songs. So typically it was about him. But it seems like worship is some worship songs are third person, but for the most part, so many of our worship songs are more vertical and they're to him. So it's like, there's a lot of you, whereas in the third person, it's a lot of he.
Sure.
And so, and I actually remembered, like, we recorded a song called You Are Holy, and it was on the My Utmost for His Highest album. And I remember singing it, and it's like we didn't have many songs that were you based.
Yeah.
And I remember, because we would look at the people and sing to them the message of basics of life for future generations. And I remember singing and looking at them and singing You Are Holy and thinking, well, I hope you're holy. I don't know. but I'm like, but this is really about him. So I'm like, I remember as an artist thinking, where do I look?
It's a different thing.
It's a different thing. And so, like, so often I say to, young singers that are trying to figure out, what they feel called to do, I'm like, God will show you, and you'll feel a comfort level.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be either or, but sometimes it seems like it's more obvious that this is what I feel more drawn to.
Yeah.
And I just know that after years of singing third person songs mostly, I felt more drawn to sing second person songs.
Love it. So here's a random but fun question. name a worship song that somebody else wrote that when you heard it, you're like, that's all right. Then you let it and you're like, good Lord.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so many at first, because as an artist, which usually had radio in my brain and I'm a writer,
right?
There were so many songs that came out that I was like, there's that song, the form is all messed up.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, like, I don't want to, I will say this, like so many Hillsong songs, because they actually created a new form.
Right.
Because their bridge section of most of their songs were like a second better chorus to their first chorus.
Totally. Yeah, the bridges were amazing.
So it's like, but I remember thinking that's not going to work. And then all of a sudden I'm like, no, actually Mighty to Save is pretty doggone good.
It's funny because I was listening to Matt Redman and the live record they did. They recorded it here in Atlanta years ago, but I heard 10,000 Reasons.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty cool. It's not, I mean, it wasn't like moving me in some massive way just in the car.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I started hearing people going, man, we're doing 10,000 Reasons. And then I led it at church and it was like, oh.
You get it. I get it. Yeah. No, I'll say
like some songs, like they
so
take
true.
on a life to themselves with the corporate body that you don't sometimes get just listening.
I would say the recent one that I had that experience with would be Build My Life. Like when I first heard it, I was like, yeah, and then I led it and I was like, oh, this is a Body of Christ song that's just everybody loves. And it's because it just has three equal parts of greatness. Like the verses can just be sung, the chorus can just be sung, or the bridge. And I remember
that's great.
First time hearing it, I was like, it's, and then when you lead it, you're like, okay, that song's going to be around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Another one for me that I'm like, if I literally said, guys, I think our church is finally just worn out of the song, is a song called Worthy of It All. And I'm like, it's like, I'm like, but it's like, it's funny because you just go to that moment and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to start singing that chorus. Everybody.
Oh yeah. And it's almost as if there's things that are being sung in an unseen realm that we tap into. It
is. It's kind of like, there's so much that we don't really know about what's going on in heaven.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I heard this one story. Chrissy Nordhoff is the person that told me this. Chrissy said that she heard a story of a guy that died and he goes to heaven and he's a songwriter. And he has a death experience. He comes back to life. But for that period of time that he was dead, and he said, I was in heaven and I saw heaven, experienced heaven, heard heaven. And he said, when I got to heaven, I'm hearing all this music and it's not all in the same key, but somehow in heaven, it all works out. And all these melodies are different, but they all work together. And he said, it's just the sound of heaven's a different thing. It's not what the earth has. He said, but then he said, as a writer, I heard my song in the middle of it. And I looked at the angel and I said, hey, that's my song. And the angel said, no. He said, the songs that you guys write on earth come from heaven. You're just the one that was listening that day and got to hear it first.
Oh my goodness.
What a great, and I'm like, and I remember when Chrissy told me that, I was like, oh, wow. That explains so much for us as writers, because it's just sometimes we just get still enough and we just are willing to wait on the Lord. And then all of a sudden we hear it and then we start writing it and we're thinking we're writing it when it really probably is that truth that it comes from heaven.
That's so good, man. Thanks for sharing that and letting us into some of your songs that have moved you. Mark, talk a little bit about your transition from CCM into, hey, I'm a worship pastor. What is that? And just any, any memories or things I know, and then we'll kind of end up with what you're doing now, what your role looks like, and then we'll talk about Worship Circle Dallas.
Awesome. Well, so back about 2006, 2007, like I was doing a lot of, For Him was kind of coming to a close, and I recorded a solo project and was still touring and traveling, and my wife and I got involved in a church in Southwest Alabama. It was called Bay Community Church, and now it's called City Hope. And a friend of mine and his family, we love them. He was starting this church, and so we end up going there, and my wife, Jody, who's a singer, was leading worship. And so I started helping.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the pastor was like, Mark, do you think you could give more of your time to this? And I was still touring pretty heavily solo.
Right.
But I started just, showing up and when I was home. And then all of a sudden, it's like I just started really feeling like, man, Lord, you're pulling my heart to this.
Mm-hmm.
And the artist thing seems to be something that's fading because I'm feeling the pastoral yearning in my heart to kind of make myself available to this. And so I essentially, we were talking one day, and Jerry, the pastor, just said, Mark, would you want to be the worship pastor here? And I'm like, yep. And my wife, who was sitting there, she was looking at me like, are you for real? Like she was shocked because we had, and in that moment she said, well, Mark, go home. Let's talk about it because you just released an album and you're touring. But I just knew in my heart that the Lord, that was a moment where I was stepping away from one thing and stepping into another.
Yeah.
And so I served there for a while, and then, that was probably 6 years, and then God called us to Gateway.
Mm-hmm.
But let me say the difference for me was, as an artist, when you're traveling and you're singing and performance is not a bad word. It's just it's a reality of, I've got a message. If I'm singing the basics of life, I'm singing the song because I believe in the message of the song. But when people clap at the end, they're clapping because they agree with the message in the song.
Right.
It's not an offering of praise to the Lord. It's really affirming the artist that, hey, great word, great message, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And maybe great vocal performance.
Right.
When I first started leading worship, I loved my friend that was the pastor because he said, Mark, you're gauging whether you're doing a good job by the way people respond when you're leading worship. And he said, that's the wrong approach. And so then all of a sudden, I started to realize, worship has nothing, I have to lead myself into God's presence as I'm leading people and model something, then hopefully they'll get the message and go there with me. And so, so then over the years, it's like the Lord has really kind of shaped me to understand the purpose in leading worship and the difference between being an artist that has a ministry that performs a song and a worship pastor or worship leader that's leading a congregation. Because as an artist, I want them to listen to the song and get the message. As a worship leader, I want them to sing and replace me,
Right.
So that they, all of a sudden, it clicks in them and it's like their expression of love to the Lord through worship.
That's beautiful. It's a great way to think about it. I think sometimes I love what you said about performance because, a lot of times it really is a performance, but God's the one we're performing for.
Yes.
So it's just a matter of the heart.
Because I don't think that, I think the danger, like as a worship leader, so this is pretty harsh, but I think it's a reality. When I was singing in For Him and people were clapping, there was applause for me because of the performance. And that ovation, like that affirmation, could be seen as, well, you know what? That glory is being given to me.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think of it that way as an artist, but I was like, well, thank you. And it's part of the thing that an artist really has to process, because if you step into too much of that, it really gets unhealthy because that becomes your identity.
Yeah.
But some of that exists as an artist. But let me say this, as a worship leader, if you want to share in any of the glory, then you're no different than Lucifer, because Lucifer didn't want all of the glory. He just wanted God to give him a share of it because he realized, man, people are responding to worship because he was the original worship leader. And so it is that thing of, as a worship leader, I think it's so important that if there's ever a moment when that spotlight or that applause is something that you want to receive for you, it's like it actually, you can't do that and continue to lead people into God's presence, because we know what happened with Lucifer. And so it's like, I would just say to worship leaders, make sure that all of the glory and all of the affirmation when you're doing that goes to him. And that way, it's like you're just the vessel, but you're never the one that's receiving. Like that glory can't, and I've struggled with that early on as a worship leader, because as an artist, I kind of felt like, well, no, that was, I sang the song, it's that thought of, I'm the singer. I mean, they're clapping, but as a worship leader, it's just not that.
Yeah. Christy Nockels has a phrase she taught us years ago: bless God and release the people. And I love the idea of us coming to, our first priority is just to bless him. Yeah. And to minister to his heart. So that's such a good word. Man, let's tell people about, we're going to be in Dallas, where you guys are, at the King's University, May 1st through 3rd. Yep. With Paul Baloche, Meredith Andrews, myself, you, and Andy Chrisman, and my friend Andy Gullahorn's going to do a concert for us on night one. Andy's hilarious and awesome. But man, we're so excited. Thank you guys for partnering with us and helping with that. It's going to be a fun time.
We're honored to do it, and we're very excited about it here. We're looking forward to having you guys here, and worship leaders and worship pastors and artists from all over the country, and probably get a lot of folks from DFW market. But it's going to be fun. I mean, I've never been to this will be my first.
Yep.
And so I'm excited to experience it for myself. Yeah. But I just think the community of people that you get to be around for a few days that have some of the same celebrations, but some of the same struggles and some of the same questions, and are looking for the same answers. Yeah. What a great thing to be able to get with folks that, that will allow space for the conversation. Yeah. And, like I said, I'm kind of walking into it expecting to learn a lot. And so I'm looking forward to being a part of it from the perspective of an attendee. Well, but then I get to share a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be good to have you and Andy there. And for you guys listening, Mark and I will be there with Andy and this crew. And it's anybody in the DFW area, Oklahoma City, Tulsa. It's really not, Mark, it's really not a conference like, hey, there's a breakout for this and a breakout for this. It really, the whole heart of it is that you would know you're loved and not alone by slowing down enough to be still. And just breathe and be loved on and seen and cared for by God and by your brothers and sisters. Some of them you will never met before, but I promise you, when we all get together and we just kind of do away with the production for a window and just let it be simple, it's just it's a beautiful time to gather with family.
I love the way you put that, Todd. And I love the heart behind it, because I think it's, we've all been to conferences. And you come to the conference, and it's like, and there's nothing wrong with conferences. I mean, I've been to them, but it's like, I love that this is the unconference.
It is.
Whatever you'd call it.
I was trying to tell our team today, it's like, we need a tagline. I was like, this is where doers be.
That's good.
It's like,
I think that's a good word. This is where doers be, because I think that we all are, I mean, I know I'm an Enneagram 3 achiever, so I don't know. I mean, most of the time it's like I've got to be active, doing something. And so, but it's, I think for all of us, if we can just get away and hear what the Lord's saying and give him space to speak to us, what a great thought to just think that we would hear from the Holy Spirit and hear what God wants to say over our lives individually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, worshipcircle.com/Dallas to register. Get your spot now. Mark, thank you so much for jumping in and not just the podcast today, but even more than that, for saying yes to being with us this year in the term. It's you've already blessed a lot of guys in your group, and we're all better as a family for having you and Jody connected to what God's doing with all this. So we look forward to seeing what the year turns out to look like as we just keep trying to take the next day at a time, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I look forward to it as well. And thanks for the invite. And we're honored to be a part. And Todd, once again, I'm just grateful for the way that God has used you and continues to use you in his kingdom. And you're obviously a gatherer, and you have a vision for what God called you to do, and you followed it and you've stayed true to it. And I just want to applaud you for that.
Thanks, buddy.
And also to say, it's fun to get to know you. I've been a fan of yours. I've watched you from afar, and and I've always seen Worship Circle, and I thought, man, what a great ministry. So,
well, I'm tickled that God would allow me in my lifetime to be friends with people that have impacted me like you, and people that just have ministered to my soul on my story and journey. And it's just, God's goodness is overwhelming to me that we just get to stay connected and keep in touch with people that mean a lot to us. So thank you, friend.
Thank you so much, Todd. Look forward to seeing you soon.